I didn't want to make this video. I didn't want to have to make this video. I try to stray away from the whatever pop culture argument and discussion is big. Generally, I try to do my own thing. But this keeps coming back to me, and I keep having little inner rants all the time. So I wanted to just lay my thoughts down because I think, given the fact that this is a popular discussion, there's a lot of noise and misinformation going around. And one thing I've noticed about a lot of videos critiquing, whether it be The Last Jedi or any Star Wars movie, is that they present their case to you with this really hit you over the head sense of objectivity. You know, their whole vibe going into the video is like, 1 + 1 = 2, not 3, idiot. Here's my video. Here's my stance that is irrevocably right. And it's like, whoa, you're literally just telling me why you like or don't like a movie, Like, calm down. Stop being so delusional. And that is actually exactly the point I wanted to make. So there are die-hard prequel fans, and then there are people who, think the prequels are a joke, and there's trilogy fans where only the trilogy movies are good, and then there's people who think the Disney movies are good, the Disney Star Wars movies. And whatever reasons you have for it, I've had a hunch on, the kind of people that like the prequels and the kind of people that like the Disney movies and why. And I watched a video yesterday. I don't want to say it proved my hunch, but it made it a lot stronger. And that is essentially what you appreciate going into filmmaking. If you're someone who is in filmmaking, maybe you're a student or you're just a film buff in general, you're probably going to like the cinematography, the directing, the acting, the general production. And if you're someone like me, who writes a lot, who appreciates storytelling, you're going to like the storytelling. And that's all it is. And that hunch was confirmed, not confirmed, I won't say that. That hunch was, well, no, I'll say it's confirmed. Fuck it, I mean, come on. That hunch was confirmed yesterday when I watched a video about this guy who was critiquing The Last Jedi. He opened with it essentially saying, like, hey, The Last Jedi is maybe the greatest Star Wars movie there ever was. And, like, literally the next sentence, I'm a filmmaker from Los Angeles. Boom. Okay. So obviously when he watches this movie, he appreciates, and I use this term a lot. If you guys have seen I did a couple podcasts with my buddy on this channel. If you've seen any of those, I use this term a lot because I think it's sort of I don't know, it's tough. You need it to an extent, but it can be a big problem, and I think with Disney it's become a problem. But these new Star Wars movies have a huge, high level of quality control. And so that's why people, like, aspiring directors or whatever, who meticulously and methodically try to put scenes together and make things look good, love that. Because it does exactly that. It makes everything look really, really good, sound good. But I think especially for something like Star Wars, it is such an explosion of creativity that very corporate level of quality control can be bad. But yeah, I mean, it's a movie, and it's a movie series, and it's fantasy, and people are going to like it for different reasons. And you just got to remember when you watch these videos that this stuff is subjective. People take it so seriously these days, and it gets to me. I take the bait. It fires me up. I get super angry. We just got to take a step back and realize how inconsequential and silly it is that we're freaking out over these movies. And I was obsessed with Star Wars as much as any kid growing up. I could write down, like, Mandalorian. I had memorized the galaxy. I read all the comics and stuff. It was my whole world growing up as a kid. I mean, why did I like it as a kid? Just because there were, a bunch of space aliens and lightsabers were cool and the X-Wings were cool. It wasn't any high-minded reason. Everyone liked it for the same reasons when they were little growing up. You only appreciate it or don't appreciate it in hindsight for completely different reasons when you're older. And if you know me, you know where I sit. You know what my stance is on Star Wars. Obviously, the trilogy is fantastic. It's sort of a classic fairy tale rewritten or revisioned for the modern times. And that's why it's so incredible, and that's why it touches so many people, because those archetypes are so classic, and they touch everyone in different ways. And, okay, so the prequels, think what you want. The other thing I have realized about the prequels is that most of the hate they get, most of the judgments those movies get, are really little specific, stupid things. And it saddens me because those movies have their issues. But again, so someone who's a fan of storytelling, I feel like most moviegoers and most people who have watched those movies have no appreciation for literary devices, for archetypes, for strong story arcs, for any of that. That just goes over their head, and all they care is if it was cringy or not, or awkward or not, or whatever. And then some of the other complaints, like there was too much CGI. Are you kidding me? Like there wasn't too much CGI in The Last Jedi? The guy, I'm going to be referring to this guy's video a lot, because I don't know his name. We'll put it in the comments maybe, because I just watched it. But yeah, one of his complaints was that like Episode 3 was a mess. Episode 3 had too much CGI. And then in that same breath, he talked about how all the Marvel movies are great. Are you kidding me? You can't say Episode 3 was bad because of CGI and then be like, Guardians of the Galaxy 2? Great movie. Are you kidding me? Like that is obviously completely nonsensical. CGI is going to be a huge part of filmmaking in general, and now and forever probably. And that's just the way it's going to be. So I think my point is, people only talk about that, as something negative, as something bad, when it helps their argument. So forget about that. CGI, you got to use CGI, especially in something like Star Wars. You think George Lucas was not going to use CGI? And it didn't hit you over the head. I mean, it hit you over the head a little bit, but not nearly as much as, say, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 or Infinity War. I mean, Infinity War isn't even out yet, but every shot from the trailer is like 100% CGI. So, against everything we're seeing nowadays, the prequels weren't that bad. And I loved how everyone got excited about how JJ JJ was going back to the original practical effects. Like, this was a big new deal. A lot of practical effects were used in the prequels that people don't really talk about. I would argue that just as many, the ratio between practical effects and CGI between the prequels and the new movies is the same. You know, George Lucas just didn't make a big deal about it because he's not a dick. J.J. Abrams is a fucking dick. See, now I'm getting fired up. Oh man. So take away from the movies what you will. Episode 1 was a little weak, but its villain was great. Darth Maul was fantastic. Obviously, the duel at the end was incredible. No one can argue that. The pod race was like futuristic chariot racing. The slave was racing for his life. That's such a classic and beautiful thing. That whole story is such of episode 1 is such a classic fairy tale. And even though Qui-Gon Jinn may be sort of a weak character, there was still lots of colorful characters. Obviously, okay, Jar Jar. Everyone hates Jar Jar, right? I mean, is there not an over-the-top, wacky comic relief in every Pixar movie that, everyone adores? Yeah, George was trying to sort of bring the new generation of kids into the world of Star Wars. And that was like the most obvious way to do that, was have like this wacky, kid-friendly character. And you can zero in on Jar Jar and be like, that's why the prequels suck, but it's a stupid argument, and you know it. No, but Darth Maul. So I don't think people appreciate everything that George Lucas writes represents something, and that is something that was lost in the Disney films. Darth Maul represents the return of the Sith. He is a quiet, but sort of angry, daunting, scary, mysterious, masterful Sith Lord. He comes and then he goes, and that's it. And that's all you need to know. You just see him, and you're like, oh shit, the Sith have returned. And that's a powerful thing. That whole scene when those double doors open and you first see him, there was nothing that cool, at least to me, in, say, Force Awakens. Nothing that powerful. 2 is bad. Even I think 2 is pretty bad. 2 was awesome when I was little. I still think that scene when Obi-Wan sees that droid that tries to poison Padme, and then he just jumps out the window at it without a second thought, that was pretty cool. But 2 is bad. George had some trouble with the romantic side of things. He wasn't very good at writing that. But that's okay. Cut the guy some slack, People hate on him a lot, and they forget that he also created the fucking thing. So you better thank him as well, in that same breath. But episode 3 is a masterpiece. The whole thing, when I walk away from watching that movie, it's like I've just seen a classic Greek tragedy play out. Everything about that movie is incredible. Everything has a purpose. The plot is strong and powerful, and very thematic. The whole tension between Obi-Wan and Anakin is tragic. Anakin as a character is very strong and iconic. That sort of tragic hero that goes to the dark side is a very real and sad and powerful image. I got nothing bad to say about episode 3. Episode 3 ties everything together perfectly, I think. So again, you'll notice that all these points I'm making are about, how well was it written? And yes, as someone who loves to write and who loves storytelling, that's what's going to touch me. But I do think, on a general basis, those things are important. And it is really sad that those things were lost. I saw a different video on YouTube a couple weeks ago. It was an interview between George, Kathleen, and then the interviewer. It must have been just months before the whole Disney trade was finalized. because it was George talking about how he was ready to stop. He was ready to end his turn as head of Lucasfilms, and he talked about how he was going to give his scripts he had written of 7, 8, and 9 over to Kathleen, and he had full confidence that she would make great movies out of them. That's sad. That's really sad. Whether you think Disney is doing a good job or not, that's fucking sad. And I can't, it stumps me because, my whole point that, yes, maybe the production was the weakest link to George's prequels, meaning that if his scripts would have been in the hands of Disney, and they would have been faithful to his scripts, we would have seen some all-around incredible movies. And what we got was something really safe and boring, in my opinion. And let's talk about that. So you might think George's writing is kind of wacky. You might think he didn't pick some of the best actors for some of the roles. You might think his editing is choppy. That's what this guy said. He said his editing was choppy. But comparing that with, say, The Force Awakens, where the writing is good in the sense that nothing weird is said that no one would say, those kinds of things, and all the conversations flow well, they make sense, there's some humor there, there's some, there's whatever. It's well written. In a very carefully edited sense, but it is terribly written for the characters. These are not fully realized characters. Rey is nothing. She's nothing. There's nothing to say about Rey because she's not a character. Finn is just a fucking weasel. Really not. There's no traits in any of these guys that really shine through and make you feel like, oh, that's that kind of person. I feel no connection to any of these characters. And even in Han and Leia, who were once fully realized characters, they're these weird, safe shadows of their former selves. Not even that. They're the same actors. So that sort of gives you the illusion that oh yeah, these guys are back. The whole way Han dies is just so un-Han. He would never do that. Even if he had a kid and he loved the kid, he wouldn't have this totally loving, passionate moment. He's always got something up his sleeve. He's always got sort of a way out. And half the time it goes awry, but even so, he's thinking of a plan, and he's good with people. He knows what people are thinking. That whole scene with Greedo, that's why that's so iconic, because it gives you such good insight into who this guy is. This guy, he's a smuggler. He is charming. He can read people. And in the scene with Kylo Ren when they're on the bridge, do you think he was reading Kylo Ren, or do you think he was being this sad, mopey, stupid dad? Which is the last thing Han Solo should ever be. And in The Last Jedi, so I gotta say this now. Unless I said it before already. I haven't seen The Last Jedi. I can't bring myself to do it. Because I know I'm not gonna like it. I'm already geared up not to like it, so what's the point? I've heard a lot about it. I've heard enough about it to keep me from watching it if I had any doubts before. But I wasn't like that for Force Awakens. I was super excited, just like everyone else. I went on, opening night. There were a bunch of stormtroopers and Darth Vader and stuff, blah blah blah. I was so excited. The moment they announced those movies were coming out, I was beside myself. I never thought I would, see another Star Wars movie. I thought that was over with. And suddenly, 10-year-old me was pumped. And yeah, so I wanted to like it. I had no reservations. As soon as I sat in that chair, and Lucasfilm came up, and it's all like green and sparkly. Ooh, I got chills. It was the beginning was great, just because I was like, holy shit, another Star Wars movie. By the end of it, as I was, we were walking to our car, my girlfriend, who had never seen a single Star Wars movie, was like, hey, how did you like it? And I really had to give that some thought. As soon as she asked me that, I was like, wait. And the closer we got to our car, and the more time I had to think about it, I was like, wow, that movie really sucked hard. So, no, I wasn't, like, against the whole thing initially. It was just... But I think that's another point. And that's a point to be made for the prequels. The prequels were very well received when they first came out, I thought, at least. Everyone I knew and talked to at the time, granted they were kids, but even, parents of kids that I had known loved them. There was nothing bad on the internet that I had read about them at the time. It was only after a couple people on YouTube made some stupid reviews about them. Here's why they suck. You know what I'm talking about. That fat guy who sits in his chair and thinks he's funny. I forget his name. It was only after a couple of those reviews bagging on the prequels blew up that everyone started to be like, the prequels suck. And it's so jarringly clear that so many of these people are not thinking for themselves. The same people that would have been fine with the prequels suddenly just on a dime, they're like, yeah, they do suck, man, don't they? Make a decision for yourself. Don't just go with what's ever popular on the internet. And I think that's a big issue in general, I think. Ooh, yeah, that's something that really makes me angry. So what I do know about The Last Jedi, what I even just sort of surmised from the trailer, I know that's not a good thing to do, but Luke is not Luke. Again, with the whole... These, not even shells of their former selves, but they're putting the same actors there, and they're just like, if Mark Hamill is in the movie, then we got Luke. You don't have to worry about the writing. You don't have to worry about his motivations and what the character, the spirit of Luke Skywalker would actually do in the situation. You got Mark Hamill, so it's all good to go. That seems to be the mindset they had with all these films. None of Luke's decisions in the Disney canon leading up to The Last Jedi, or leading up to The Force Awakens and going into The Last Jedi, are remotely what the real Luke Skywalker would do. He wouldn't try to train some people, then it goes bad, then he fucking walks away and hangs out. That is clearly terrible writing for Luke Skywalker. How can you destroy one of the most iconic heroes in film? It's turning him into this weak nothing. It's so sad. And Snoke, he's just sort of been planted as the new Darth Sidious. See, that's what's so funny to me, is that Disney is clearly like, they don't understand Star Wars, so they're trying to sort of recreate all the important aspects of it, at least all the iconic, visually important aspects of Star Wars. They're just trying to, and they're fumbling it. That's all. That's all the Force Awakens was, and that's why people hate that one too. It's because it is a rehash of A New Hope. There's no arguing with that. No arguing with that. That's all it was. There were some things that were different, of course, because it's a different movie, and they didn't want to literally recreate A New Hope, but that's what they did by accident, sort of, because they were so scared to do anything different. And The Last Jedi, so Snoke was just, Darth Sidious, but this time, this Darth Sidious had no plan, no reasoning behind anything he did, and then he just died. And he's supposed to be like the great master villain. So stupid. And even some of the weakest... So, Count Dooku, I feel like, is regarded as the weakest on-screen villain. in Star Wars. At least that's the sense I get. But even he is like, you know what? He's this ex-Jedi who really truly believes he's doing the right thing and knows that something's up. But then at the same time, like, you know, he's too scared to make a move. He's in this shitty situation. Snoke has nothing. He sits there and he dies and he looks gross. Kylo Ren, okay. He's like, I get it, you know. He's this whiny kid who wants power, so he's I don't even want to say he's like Anakin, because he's not. He's just a brat. Anakin had very... I mean, the whole point of Anakin, that he was like such a good-hearted person, and those good intentions got slowly morphed into evil. But that's not what it is with Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren's just a brat, which is fine. But he can't stand on his own. He can't be the one villain. Not strong enough. And they could have done something cool with Snoke, and they fumbled that too. And the whole situation going into The Force Awakens doesn't make sense. Why, after everything Luke did, the Death Star was blown up, peace reigns through the galaxy, why suddenly are we back to square one? Where we have the Resistance. It's so comical, even when I say this shit. It's like, my God, how did this get green-lighted by anyone? We have the Resistance fighting back against the almighty Empire, whatever, the First Order. How did we get there? After everything that happened in the trilogy, after Endor, why? It makes no sense. And I'm sure that in the comments, oh, you gotta read the comics. Yeah, I'm sure the shitty comics are filled with excuses of how we got to that nonsensical point. But reading a comic, I don't want to have... If I have to read a bunch of shit to make sense of a movie, then the movie is bad. The director did a poor job of giving me the message, of painting a clear and concise picture for me. That's not my fault because I'm lazy, because I didn't read some comics. That is only a point in my argument of why this movie is so bad. So now you, if you didn't know already, now you know how I feel about those new movies. They have no heart. They have no heart. They look really good. I did see the duel sequence from The Last Jedi between Rey and Kylo, where they're like fighting all the guards. That was cool. It looked great. It looked really good. Too bad I don't care about either of them as people. But again, so to recap, I just had to sort of... None of this was planned. I didn't have any notes or anything. It gets me fired up. So I thought I should tell you guys sort of where I'm at. Maybe you agree with me. Maybe you disagree with me. But again, at the end of the day, this is my opinion, and I think it's important to remember that. This is not like... And this is not even, you know, you can't persuade me. Maybe you could. Maybe you could. I highly doubt it, but... And if you are into film and directing, then and you love those movies, the new Disney movies, then that's great. That's great. But don't tell me I should like them. Don't tell me it's objective fact that these movies are great, because that's a load of bullshit. It just makes me sad, because George Lucas's vision, message, heart, and soul are so clear in the trilogy and the prequel, and then they're so clearly vacant in the new movies that I can't even watch them. It just makes me sad.